the boys and the wall. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So we'll start off with the wall because it's a little easier to just kind of go over. So now the wall is a army ability that is active at all times, that you can think of it that way. And the ability that's active at all times is friendly orc units with this ability can reroll advance. So now at all times, even when your wall is not active, orc boys can reroll advance. That's what I'm talking about. Whoa, right? So in 8th edition, when I started, we used to always be able to reroll our charges. Can you check if we reroll our advances in 8th edition? I remember, but I know we reroll our charges. So getting that kind of always passive reroll is a huge deal. If you were here because 10th edition, now you're here in 11th edition, you don't know about even 9th edition. You don't know about that kind of always constant re-rolling that orc boys used to have when it came to their actual movement shenanigans. So I'm really happy to see that our advances are going to go much further for full-time re-roll advances. Of course, some data sheets like the Big Mac got to get rewritten to make more sense, but it also means that all the abilities like +1 from the big boss or stratagems from certain the green tide, for example, where you can do buffs to your charges as well. Any kind of way that you can synergize your charges with your advance rolls, this goes much further. So we're happy to have this at all times. But now there's a second part to your WA, so your army wide rule, which is you can declare a war cry once per battle at the start of the command phase. You can use this ability if you do so. Orcs with the WA are riled up. So consider rile up to be like a status that is activated from your one-time army. So instead of saying like I'm walled up, right? You're riled up. You're always going to have the wall passive ability of reroll advances. But when you declare the war cry ability to become riled up, then you get access to very familiar yet different rules, right? And yes, it's the command phase, not your command phase. Be specific, because the first time I misspoke and I said my command phase. So it's back to the condition it was at the beginning of this edition, which is debatably good or bad, but we'll talk about that in a second. When we talk about the riled up units, though, some of these abilities have changed and some are familiar. So you have good old 5-up invuln army wide across all your riled up orc unit. They also have ranged attacks, have assault, right? So this is very much open to walker, monster, vehicles, all types of different units. That it just means that you can actually have it on every unit without having to tap into a specific detachment. When that unit is selected to make an advance, that advance move does not prevent the unit from making a charge. So that's familiar. Now, some things you'll notice: we have lost +1 attack and we have lost one. So that sucks. So now that means that though we were looking at the abilities that were extra strength, for example, extra strength, extra attacks for our getting +1 attack from our wall, we don't have that access anymore, right? Sorry, guys, I was talking too much. So before we were looking at squigs or kill rigs, and we were saying all these extra attacks are being given +1 attack from our wall. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. We also don't have +1 strength anymore to a bunch of different weapons. But that's when we look at our actual data sheet, right? And we look at our actual boys data sheet and answers more of these questions for us. And we go, oh, we didn't actually lose out necessarily. Now we have access to these things full time. Another thing that chat brought up that is correct as well, that I should be more clear about, is that it says at the start of the command phase. That implies it's any command phase, so you can use this as a defensive wall as well. So like, for example, in the past, people would want to use the wall so that they could preemptively give off 5-up invuln to their walkers and their gun line from Dreadmob. Well, in this case, you can actually do it in the enemy's turn and try to activate that 5-up invuln if you want to use it defensively. Now, is that going to change possibly and clear it up? I don't know, but they're showing us directly from the codex. So when it comes to our strength, though, in our actual melee profiles, that actually increased +1 and it's permanent. So if you look at the power claws at the very bottom of this Orc Boy data sheet, as a strength 10 power claw, and that power claw hits on 3+. So no more hitting on 4s. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. So I'm happy to see that. Before we jump back into the video, shout out to Monument Hobbies and their Pro Acryl paints. If you're an Orc player, you already know the pain of painting mobs of models, vehicles, bikers, walkers, too many lads at once. And that's why I like Pro Acryl. The paint is high quality, easy to work with, and comes with properly thin paint right out the bottle, which means less time fighting with your paints and more time getting your Waaagh on the table. So whether you're a new orc player and joining the Great Waaagh, or you're trying to finish another 20 gits before your event, and check out Pro Acryl paints from Monument Hobbies using my affiliate link in the description. It helps support the channel at no extra cost to you, because the faster you paint, the faster you Waaagh. Now, that's a couple things to unpack here, though, right away in people's minds. You can either look at it as a half cup empty or a half cup full, right? I've lost one attack, but I hit one better. And instead of having +1 strength, now I just have my base strength at all time that's increased. What our wall rule actually tells us here, and what GW is intentionally trying to do, is they're trying to make it so orcs somewhat strong, harder, more consistently outside of the wall. Now the wall is more of a movement buff. That way you can end up intentionally stacking offensive buffs and capabilities and combos to your war cry ability, right? Your riled up ability, and it can be in a controlled manner, yet a synergistic manner between all the 15 different detachments. So instead of everything having to come down to a one turn, a massive offensive push that is all based off the wall and all of its aspects, and then everything else in your detachments almost becomes secondary to the point that you care more about the wall than anything else. In this case, it's, well, the wall is a different form of movement buffs and defense, and then you can also base off the keywords, the detachments, anything like that. We're going to be able to attach that to being riled up as the status, and maybe return these kind of buffs like +1 attack, or maybe another way to get +1 strength, right? So there's a lot there that we can actually look at. Some people immediately like, poo, that's negative, that sucks. Some might say, hey, that's actually cool, because this means that they can do more, and we're not just sitting weak ducks outside of the wall at all times, because as well as the boy chopper. So the boy chopper we're looking at is now strength 5 at all times. Then again, we say, well, that means you have one less attack than you typically would, because you don't have the additional attack from the wall currently. Another cool couple things that we can point out from this data sheet is absolutely the knob at the top has 3 wounds. That implies that mega knobs are going to have 4 wounds. That implies that the new knob kits are going to have 3 wounds. That implies that, in my opinion, the Breaker Boys and the Tank Buster Boys, their knob, who's currently in a bigger base and has no real distinction at the moment, is going to get the distinction, hopefully, of +1 wound as well, and being wound 3 also, 3 wounds as well. So I'm really happy to see that all those guys are getting brought up to be more thick. Hopefully the models themselves represent that. Another thing that's really cool that we're looking at is, if you see the big chopper, there's a cleave 2. We've seen cleave 1, now we got 2. We also see that there's rapid fire, of course, still in our weapons. There's also blast 2, as I pointed out earlier, on the rocket for the frag launcher. But we see how obvious and prevalent that is right now in 40K. So if it's obvious for us, I think it's going to be on our opponents too. So good to keep that in mind. Another thing we're looking at is lethal hits, non-monster vehicle. So this, from how I understand it, is they're saying that our lethal hits aren't going to apply to monsters and vehicles. So they don't want lethal hits to be OP. Maybe they're taking that away as a whole, and then only certain units are going to have access to lethal hits that work at all times. So I like it, because if we're going to be hitting on 6s a lot, or 5s, and it means when our 6s hit, if we still have access to staying, awesome. If we don't, these weapons that are already built into our data sheets immediately go with the wall ability, or in this case, the riled up ability, where I'll have assault. So I have incentive to shoot the custom shooters, which are going to be lethal hits, rapid fire 2, 18 inches, 4 shots. So 6 shots a piece per boy that they're going to have on them, at least from how we understand it, on some of the characters. And then, I'm not the characters, the knobs in the unit. Or you have the basic boy shooter, which is going to be lethal hits also, rapid fire 1, 18 inches, 2 attacks. And these are still strength 4. One thing we did lose a strength on that nobody really cares about is the big shooter has been brought down to strength 4 instead of strength 5. So that does suck, at least in my opinion, for battle wagons, to whatever degree that matters. So a lot of real cool stuff in there. We have the +1 on the power claws. We have a revert to our strength, because if you didn't know about this in the past, knobs used to have strength 10. All power claws were strength 10 as a whole. But boys being brought up to strength 5 is interesting. It definitely also makes me wonder where our beast snagger strength is going to be. Are they going to be brought up to strength 6 passively at all times. What is going to be the distinction or what makes them unique as well? Because now the boys are starting to kind of move over into their side of the benefits or field. GW looks like they also intentionally did not show the Orc Boy ability, datasheet ability. So I do have a little bit of an assumption of how it could look when I talk about the combat patrol video that's going to come out next after this one. That I wonder if maybe that's going to be the ability that they're going to get, or maybe just gives us more reason to assume that it's not going to be the same, as well as them hiding it right now and not showing it to us. Another thing, like I said, was the Mega Knobs. We haven't seen them. They haven't showed Kill Team, so we know there's going to be knobs for the most part. We know there's going to be Mega Knobs somewhere in the future, and we know there's going to be Orc Bikers that they showed off once, but then they haven't really talked about again. All of these things are going to be quite impactful in the book with everything we've seen with the detachments and with the new units and how they look, which is pretty exciting to see. One more thing that I wanted to mention was for our war track. You know, certain units like the Death Killer war track still have something called the Scorcher as something that could be led by it, which is odd. And the Scorcher used is currently a Legends unit, which is a war track with a Flamer. So if that becomes a thing and that's strength 5, I would actually very much like to see that as well. So there's a lot of really cool things that are going on, because remember, whether it's a Big Mac Docker rig, a war track, your infantry boys, your transports, your trucks, your battle wagons, units that have the Waaagh and the riled up ability get ranged assault. That means that can be all of our units in our whole list for every army. So that's going to be sick, having the assault keyword on your kill rigs, for example, if they have a similar ability. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!